The deeper levels of the facility defied human architectural understanding. Corridors curved and twisted in ways that hurt to look at, creating optical illusions that made Jessica question whether she was moving forward or backward. The bioluminescent walls pulsed in rhythm with something that might have been a heartbeat, and the air itself seemed to whisper with alien voices. "I'm reading massive electromagnetic activity ahead," Morrison reported, consulting her handheld scanner. "Whatever's down here, it's drawing enormous amounts of power." Dr. Vasquez was becoming increasingly agitated as they descended. The neural cascade disruptor in her pack was beginning to resonate with the alien technology around them, creating an uncomfortable harmony that seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to their minds. "The psychic interference is intensifying," she warned. "Everyone needs to be alert for false sensory input. The neural core's presence can create vivid hallucinations." As if summoned by her words, shadows began moving at the edges of their vision. Parks spun toward movement that wasn't there, and Kim called out a warning about enemies that existed only in his mind. Jessica felt the crawling sensation of alien thoughts pressing against her consciousness, trying to reshape her perceptions. She used the injector Dr. Vasquez had given her, feeling the chemical cocktail flood her system and provide some protection against the psychic assault. The hallucinations receded slightly, but didn't disappear entirely. They reached another level, and Webb's point positions saved their lives. His hand signal for enemy contact came just as a Kithra Guardian materialized from what had appeared to be solid wall. These were different from the warriors they'd encountered above, larger, more integrated with the facility's biological systems, and armed with weapons that seemed to channel the spire's own energy. Rivera's first burst caught the Guardian's center mass, but the creature barely staggered. Its return fire carved a molten line across the wall where Rivera had been standing a second before. "Concentrated fire!" Jessica ordered. "Chin, Kim, flank left. Morrison, find us another way down." The firefight in the confined space was brutal. The Guardian's weapon systems were integrated into the facility itself, allowing it to fire from multiple angles simultaneously. But human adaptability proved superior to alien integration. Park's improvised grenades disrupted the creature's connection to the spire's systems long enough for the Marines to close the distance and finish it with conventional weapons. "Found it," Morrison called from across the chamber. "Service access leading directly down to what my scanner says is the core level." They had been underground for 25 minutes. The diversionary attacks would be ending soon, and alien reinforcements would be flooding back to the central facility. Jessica could already hear movement above them, the chittering sounds of Kithra communication, and the organic whine of their weapons charging. "Dr. Vasquez, how much farther?" Jessica asked as they entered the service access Morrison had located. "We're close. Very close. The neural activity readings are off the charts." The scientist's hands were shaking now, whether from fear or the psychic pressure, Jessica couldn't tell. The access corridor led to a vast chamber that took Jessica's breath away. The neural core was unlike anything she had imagined, a massive organic structure that filled the center of the space, reaching from floor to ceiling like a living tree. Its surface was covered with what looked like neural pathways, glowing with electrical activity and pulsing with alien thought patterns. Around the core, smaller structures provided what appeared to be monitoring and interface functions. The entire chamber hummed with energy, and Jessica could feel the weight of alien intelligence pressing against her mind. This was the brain of their invasion force, the nexus that coordinated their activities across hundreds of miles. "My God!" Webb whispered. "It's alive! More than alive!" Dr. Vasquez said, approaching the core with scientific fascination overriding her fear. "This is a collective intelligence. Every alien in their network is connected to this structure. When we destroy it, we'll be severing the link for thousands of individual beings." Jessica felt a moment of doubt. They were about to commit genocide on a scale she had never contemplated. But then she remembered the burning cities, the millions of human dead, the children who would never grow up because the Kithra had decided humanity was expendable. "Plant the device," she ordered. Dr. Vasquez moved toward the core with the neural cascade disruptor, but as she approached, the alien structure began to react. Tendrils of living metal emerged from the base, reaching toward her with obvious hostile intent. Chin stepped forward with his assault rifle, but Jessica waved him back. "Vasquez, can you reach the optimal placement position? I need to get within 50 meters for maximum effect. The core's defenses are designed to prevent exactly what we're trying to do." Parks solved the problem with typical directness. "Cover me," he said, and began setting charges around the base of the core. "I'll clear you a path." The explosions came in sequence, each one disrupting the core's defensive systems and creating gaps in its protective barriers. Dr. Vasquez used the confusion to dart forward, placing the disruptor device against the core's base and activating its initialization sequence. The effect was immediate and devastating. The neural core began to convulse, its bioluminescent patterns flashing in chaotic rhythms. The alien voices that had been whispering at the edges of their consciousness became screams of pain and confusion. "It's working," Dr. Vasquez reported. "The cascade effect is propagating through their network. But the initialization process requires 10 minutes for full completion." "How long before they can shut it down?" Jessica asked. "They can't. The disruptor is designed to be irreversible once activated. But they can still try to destroy it, and us, before the process finishes." As if summoned by her words, the sound of alien forces approaching echoed from the access corridors. The Kithra were coming in force, determined to protect their command nexus even if it meant bringing down the entire facility. Jessica looked at her team, 6 people who had already accomplished the impossible just by reaching this point. They had planted the device that would give humanity its first real victory against the invaders. Now someone had to stay behind to ensure it worked. "Everyone out," she ordered. "I'll remain to secure the device." "Like hell," Rivera said immediately. "We came down here together, we leave together." "That's not how this works," Jessica replied. The mission requires the device to function properly," Park interrupted. "It doesn't specify who has to babysit it." Jessica saw the determination in their faces and realized that none of them were going to abandon her. They would all stay and die together before leaving her alone. It was exactly what she would have done in their position. "All right," she said. "We hold this position for 10 minutes. Then we try to get out together." The first wave of Kithra Guardians reached them 4 minutes later. These were the facility's elite defenders, beings that were more machine than biological, optimized for combat in the core chamber's unique environment. Their weapons were extensions of the facility's own power systems, capable of channeling massive amounts of energy. Webb and Kim established a defensive position behind one of the monitoring stations, using its bulk to provide cover while engaging the advancing aliens. Their conventional weapons were proving less effective against these enhanced guardians, forcing them to rely on tactics and positioning rather than firepower. Morrison had found an access panel for the facility's internal systems and was working to disrupt the aliens' ability to coordinate their attack. "I can't shut down their communications entirely," she reported, "but I can introduce enough interference to slow them down." Dr. Vasquez monitored the disruptor device, calling out progress reports as the cascade effect spread through the Kithra network. 60% completion. The psychic interference is intensifying. They're beginning to lose coherence across their entire command structure. Park's explosives were keeping the aliens at bay, but his supply was running low. 4 more charges," he reported. "After that, it's conventional weapons only." Chen noticed movement in the upper reaches of the chamber, and called out a warning just as aerial Kithra units descended from concealed positions. These were different again, sleek, fast, and designed for 3-dimensional combat in confined spaces. The battle became chaotic as the team found themselves fighting on multiple levels simultaneously. Ground-based guardians advanced through the main access points while aerial units attacked from above. The core chamber filled with energy weapons fire, explosions, and the alien screams of wounded Kithra. 80% completion, Dr. Vasquez announced. The cascade effect is reaching critical mass. Around them, the alien facility began to show signs of systemic failure. The bioluminescent walls flickered erratically, and the organic architecture started to convulse as the neural core's destruction propagated through the connected systems. Jessica felt a moment of grim satisfaction. Even if they didn't survive the next few minutes, Operation Nightfall would be remembered as the turning point in humanity's war against the invaders. The cascade effect would spread through the Kythera network, severing their coordination and giving the resistance the breathing room it needed to regroup and counterattack. But they weren't dead yet, and Jessica intended to keep it that way for as long as possible. 95% completion! Dr. Vasquez shouted over the cacophony of weapons fire and alien screams. The cascade is reaching terminal propagation. The neural core was dying, and its death throes were shaking the entire facility. Cracks appeared in the organic walls as the alien architecture lost cohesion. Emergency lighting systems flickered and failed, leaving the chamber illuminated only by the chaotic flashing of the core's failing neural pathways. Jessica's team had been fighting for 8 minutes that felt like hours. Chin was down with a wounded shoulder, but still functional. Rivera had burns across his left arm from an alien energy weapon, but continued to maintain covering fire. Their ammunition was running critically low. The Kythera forces attacking them were becoming increasingly desperate and uncoordinated as the cascade effect spread through their network. The precise, hive-mind tactics they had demonstrated earlier were breaking down into individual panic responses. That's it, Dr. Vasquez announced. Full cascade achieved. The disruptor has severed their network connections across the entire regional grid. The effect was immediately apparent. The alien forces in the chamber suddenly stopped their coordinated assault, confusion replacing tactical precision. Some of the Guardians simply froze in place, while others began firing wildly in all directions. The collective intelligence that had made them so formidable was gone. Now we run, Jessica ordered. Everybody move! The team fought their way out of the core chamber, taking advantage of the aliens' disorganization to break through their defensive positions. The facility around them was collapsing, not physically, but systemically. Life support systems failed, internal transportation stopped functioning, and the bioluminescent lighting dimmed to almost nothing. Webb led them through the darkness using his knowledge of the facility's layout, gained during their descent. But the organic architecture was changing as the neural core's influence faded. Passages that had been open now sealed themselves, while new openings appeared in previously solid walls. The facility is reverting to some kind of dormant state, Dr. Vasquez explained as they climbed toward the surface levels. Without the core's active control, the biological systems are shutting down. They reached the main level to find chaos. Alien forces throughout the facility were exhibiting the same confusion they had seen in the core chamber. Some had simply stopped functioning entirely, while others moved aimlessly without apparent purpose. The precise military organization that had made the Kythera so dangerous was crumbling before their eyes. The entrance to the facility was blocked by collapsed biological matter, forcing Park to use his last 2 charges to clear a path. As they emerged into the pre-dawn light of Grant Park, Jessica could see the cascade effect's impact across the entire city. Alien installations that had been active and threatening just hours before now stood dark and silent. Patrol craft that had been zigzagging overhead in precise patterns were now flying erratically or had crashed entirely. The mechanical precision of the invasion force had been replaced by chaos and confusion. Jessica's radio crackled back to life as they moved away from the facility's interference field. Admiral Jackson's voice came through clearly. Phoenix 7, this is Nest. Please respond. Nest, this is Phoenix 7. Mission accomplished. Repeat, mission accomplished. Neural core destroyed. Phoenix 7, we are tracking massive disruptions across all alien installations. Whatever you did down there is working. We're seeing system failures as far north as Milwaukee. Jessica looked back at the alien command spire, now dark and lifeless against the dawn sky. They had done it. 8 people had penetrated the most heavily defended alien installation on the continent, destroyed their command and control network, and lived to tell about it. But more importantly, they had proven that the Kythera could be beaten. The cascade effect was spreading beyond their wildest hopes, disrupting alien operations across the entire Great Lakes region. For the first time since the arrival, humanity had struck a blow that truly hurt their invaders. "Next, we're going to need extraction," Jessica continued. "We have wounded and are in no condition for extended ground movement." "Copy, Phoenix 7. Extraction teams are en route to your position. ETA 15 minutes. The sound of human aircraft approaching from the south was the most beautiful thing Jessica had ever heard. The Resistance's few remaining helicopters were flying in formation, their pilots taking advantage of the aliens' communication breakdown to operate in previously hostile airspace. As they waited for pickup, Dr. Vasquez continued monitoring the cascade effect's propagation. "The disruption is spreading faster than we projected," she reported. "The Kythera network was more interconnected than we realized. Each node that goes offline is triggering failures in adjacent nodes." "How long will the effect last?" Webb asked. "Hard to say. The immediate communication breakdown should persist for at least 12 hours, as Admiral Jackson predicted. But the psychological impact on individual Kythera could last much longer. They've never operated without collective intelligence before. Learning to function independently will take time they may not have." The extraction helicopters touched down in the ruins of what had once been Buckingham Fountain, their rotors whipping up clouds of dust and debris. Jessica helped her wounded team members aboard, taking one last look at the alien facility they had just destroyed. The command spire was already beginning to show signs of biological decay without the neural core's sustaining influence. What had once seemed like an impregnable fortress was becoming a monument to humanity's refusal to surrender. While Jessica's team fought through the depths of the alien command center, similar scenes of desperate courage were playing out across the continent. Operation Nightfall was not just a single mission, but a coordinated uprising involving every remaining resistance cell in North America. In the ruins of New York, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez led 300 survivors in a simultaneous assault on a Kythera processing facility. The aliens had been using the structure to convert captured humans into some form of biofuel, a discovery that had hardened the Resistance's resolve beyond any possibility of negotiation. Martinez crouched behind the rubble of what had once been Times Square, watching her teams move into position around the processing center. The building looked like a massive organic tumor growing from the ruins of Manhattan, its surface pulsing with the same bioluminescent patterns they had observed in other alien installations. "Echo team in position," came the whispered report over her earpiece. "Delta team ready. Foxtrot team standing by." Martinez checked her watch. In Chicago, Jessica's team would be approaching the neural core. The timing had to be perfect. The processing facility's defenses were linked to the same command network that controlled the entire eastern seaboard. If they struck too early, the aliens would have time to coordinate a response. Too late, and the cascade effect might not reach their target in time to disrupt its defensive systems. "All teams, this is Marathon Control." Admiral Jackson's voice came through clearly. "Phoenix 7 has achieved target penetration. Cascade initiation in T-5 minutes. 5 minutes to live or die." Martinez had been an Army Ranger before the world ended, accustomed to high-stakes missions where seconds mattered. But this was different. This wasn't about completing an objective or eliminating a target. This was about the survival of the human species. She thought about her daughter, who had been killed in the first wave of attacks while attending school in Baltimore. Sarah had been 8 years old, full of questions about everything and dreams of becoming an astronaut. The Kythera had stolen that future, along with millions of others. Tonight, Martinez intended to collect some interest on humanity's debt. "Cascade effect initiated," Jackson's voice announced. "All units, you are green for assault." Martinez gave the signal, and 300 survivors emerged from the ruins of New York to reclaim their city. The assault was brutal and swift. The processing facility's defenses, suddenly cut off from central coordination, responded with automated systems that lacked the adaptability of conscious direction. Human ingenuity and desperation overcame alien technology through sheer audacity. Martinez's teams had spent weeks studying the facility's routines, identifying weak points and defensive patterns. They knew exactly where to place explosive charges for maximum effect, which systems to target first, and how to exploit the brief window of confusion that the cascade effect would provide. The outer perimeter fell within minutes. Alien defenders, suddenly deprived of their collective intelligence network, reverted to individual survival behaviors that made them predictable and vulnerable. The precise coordination that had made them so formidable became a liability when Central Command disappeared. But it was what they found inside the processing facility that would haunt Martinez for the rest of her life. Thousands of human prisoners, connected to alien bioconversion equipment that was slowly draining their life force to power the Kithra war machine. Many were already too far gone to save, their bodies reduced to little more than biological batteries. "Get them out," Martinez ordered, her voice tight with controlled fury. "Every single one." Her medics worked frantically to disconnect the prisoners from the alien machinery, using tools Dr. Vasquez had provided to safely disrupt the bioconversion process. Some of the victims were responsive, crying with relief as they were freed from months of nightmare captivity. Others were catatonic, their minds broken by prolonged exposure to alien neural manipulation. "Colonel, we've got movement on the upper levels," one of her team leaders reported. "Looks like Kithra command staff trying to activate emergency protocols. Delta team, secure the command level. No prisoners." The final assault on the facility's command center was swift and merciless. The Kithra commanders, cut off from their network and unable to coordinate an effective defense, fell to concentrated small arms fire. But even in death, they managed to activate the facility's self-destruct sequence. "Everyone out!" Martinez shouted as alarms began sounding throughout the structure. "Facility collapse in 2 minutes!" The evacuation was a nightmare of smoke, emergency lighting, and the organic screams of a dying alien structure. Martinez's teams carried the rescued prisoners through collapsing corridors as the bioconversion machinery began eating itself from within. They emerged from the facility with 30 seconds to spare, watching from a safe distance as the processing center imploded with a sound like breaking bones. The structure folded in on itself, its biological components consuming each other in a cascade of self-destruction that left nothing but a smoking crater where thousands of humans had been slowly murdered. "Marathon Control, this is Echo 7, Martinez reported. "Processing facility destroyed. We have approximately 200 survivors extracted, medical attention urgently required." "Outstanding work, Echo 7. Extraction teams are en route to your position." As Martinez watched human helicopters approach through the smoke-filled sky above Manhattan, she felt the same sense of grim satisfaction that Jessica was experiencing in Chicago. They had struck back. They had saved lives. They had proven that the Kithra could bleed. But more importantly, they had disrupted a key component of the alien war machine. The bioconversion facilities were essential to the Kithra's ability to sustain their occupation forces. Without the energy they provided, the aliens would be forced to rely on their own resources that were already stretched thin across multiple worlds. Similar scenes were playing out across the continent. In Los Angeles, resistance fighters were storming an alien communication array that coordinated Kithra activities along the Pacific coast. In Denver, survivors were sabotaging the mining operations that provided raw materials for alien construction projects. In Atlanta, a team of former CDC scientists was destroying a biological research facility where the Kithra had been developing new weapons for use against human populations. Operation Nightfall was succeeding beyond Admiral Jackson's most optimistic projections. The cascade effect from the destroyed neural core was propagating through the alien network faster than anticipated, creating windows of opportunity that human resistance cells were exploiting with devastating effectiveness. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the arrival, humanity was winning. 3 weeks after Operation Nightfall, Jessica stood on the observation deck of the Willis Tower, watching human aircraft patrol the skies over Chicago for the first time since the arrival. The cascade effect had exceeded all expectations, triggering a network collapse that reached as far as the Atlantic coast. The resistance had moved quickly to exploit the aliens' confusion. Coordinated attacks across multiple cities had reclaimed vast areas of territory, and refugee populations were beginning to emerge from their underground shelters. The process of rebuilding would take years, perhaps decades, but for the first time since the invasion began, it seemed possible. Admiral Jackson joined her at the observation window, his appearance already showing the effects of improved morale and regular meals. The Resistance had captured several alien food production facilities, providing desperately needed nutrition for the surviving population. "Final casualty reports are in," he said, handing Jessica a tablet displaying the mission statistics. "Operation Nightfall cost us 47 people across all the diversionary teams. But the strategic impact has been enormous. We've liberated over 3 million people in the past 3 weeks." Jessica scrolled through the reports, noting the resistance cells that had sprung up in formerly occupied territories. The cascade effect had broken the aliens' ability to coordinate responses, allowing human forces to operate with unprecedented freedom. "What's the status of the Kithra themselves?" she asked. "Fragmenting," Jackson replied. "Without their collective intelligence network, they're reverting to individual survival behaviors. Most are simply trying to hide and avoid contact with human forces. Some are attempting to establish local hierarchies, but they lack the communication infrastructure to coordinate beyond immediate geographical areas." "And the construction projects intelligence detected before the mission?" Jackson's expression grew serious. "Still active, unfortunately. The cascade effect disrupted their coordination, but the construction itself appears to be largely automated. We're working to identify and target those facilities before they can complete whatever they're building." Jessica nodded, but her attention was drawn to movement in the street below. Human civilians were beginning to return to the downtown area, tentatively exploring their reclaimed city. Children played in Grant Park where the Alien Command Center had once stood, their laughter carrying up through the afternoon air. "There's something else," Jackson continued. "Dr. Vasquez has been analyzing the data we recovered from the neural core during its destruction. She thinks she's found something significant." "What kind of something?" "The Kithra weren't just invading Earth, they were fleeing from something else. The neural patterns she captured suggest they were driven here by a threat they consider even more dangerous than themselves." Jessica felt a chill despite the warm afternoon sun. "So we may have just inherited their enemy as well as their territory." "Possibly. But that's a problem for another day. Right now, we have a world to rebuild and people to protect. The immediate threat has been neutralized, and that's what matters." As they spoke, Jessica's team members were scattered across the Resistance's expanding operations. Park was training new demolition specialists, sharing his knowledge with the engineers who would rebuild humanity's military capabilities. Morrison was working with the communications teams, helping to establish secure networks that could function despite alien interference. Webb had returned to Chicago PD, helping to establish law enforcement in the reclaimed territories. The Marines, Chin, Rivera, and Kim, were training new resistance fighters, passing on the hard-won tactical knowledge that had made Operation Nightfall possible. Dr. Vasquez continued her research into alien technology, working to understand their capabilities and develop countermeasures for future encounters. Her neural cascade disruptor had become the template for a new generation of anti-alien weapons. "What about you?" Jackson asked Jessica. "You've earned some rest. Take some time, see what's left of your family, try to remember what normal life feels like." Jessica considered the offer. She had family in California, assuming they had survived the initial invasion. The thought of seeing them again, of perhaps finding some fragment of her old life, was tempting. But as she looked out over the recovering city, she knew she wasn't ready to walk away. "I think I'll stick around," she said. "There's still work to do here." Jackson smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. The Resistance is reorganizing into a proper military structure, and I need experienced officers to lead the new units. Interested in a promotion? What did you have in mind? Colonel Chin has a nice ring to it, don't you think? I'm putting together a special operations division, focused on deep strike missions against remaining alien installations. Your experience with Nightfall makes you the obvious choice to lead it." Jessica felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. More missions, more impossible odds, more good people placed in harm's way on her orders. But also more chances to hurt the invaders, to reclaim humanity's world piece by piece. "I accept," she said. As the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded Jessica of burning cities, she made herself a promise. The Kithra had taken everything from humanity, their cities, their governments, their sense of security. But they had made one critical mistake. They had left survivors. And survivors, Jessica had learned, were dangerous things. They had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. They adapted, they endured, and eventually they struck back. The cascade effect was just the beginning. Humanity's war for survival had become humanity's war for reclamation, and Jessica intended to see it through to the end. Whatever was out there in the darkness between stars, whatever threat had driven the Kithra to Earth, it would find humans ready and waiting. The species that had once hidden in caves and tunnels was emerging into the light, harder and more determined than ever before. The aliens had wanted to make Earth their refuge. Instead, they had forged it into humanity's weapon. And that weapon was just getting started. The memorial wall in Grant Park stretched for nearly a quarter mile, each name etched in black granite representing a life lost during the occupation. Jessica walked along its length every morning before beginning her duties as commander of the Special Operations Division, reading the names and remembering why the fight continued. The world was healing, but slowly. Major cities across North America and Europe had been liberated, their populations emerging from underground shelters to begin the massive task of reconstruction. The Kithra remnants had been pushed back to isolated enclaves, cut off from each other and increasingly desperate. But Dr. Vasquez's warnings about the threat that had driven the aliens to Earth were proving accurate. Deep space monitoring stations were detecting massive objects moving through the outer solar system, ships, or something like ships, following the same trajectory the Kithra had used. "They'll be here within 18 months, Admiral Jackson said as they reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "Whatever drove the Kithra to Earth is coming to finish what they started." Jessica studied the tactical projections, calculating response times and defensive capabilities. Humanity had come far in 6 months, but they were still recovering from near extinction. Their military capabilities, while growing rapidly, were nowhere near what they would need to face a threat that had terrified the Kithra. "What do we know about them?" she asked. "Not much. The aliens called them the Devourers in their neural communications. As far as we can tell, they consume entire worlds, not just the inhabitants, but the planets themselves. The Kithra were running from complete annihilation." Jessica walked to the window of the command center, looking out over a Chicago that was slowly returning to life. Construction crews worked around the clock to repair damaged buildings, while children played in parks that had been battlefields just months before. Humanity had proven its resilience against one extinction-level threat. Soon, they would need to prove it again. "We'll be ready," she said simply. Jackson joined her at the window. "The aliens had a 1,000-year head start on us technologically, and we beat them through determination and tactical innovation. But these Devourers represent something even more advanced." "Then we'll adapt," Jessica replied. "It's what we do." She thought about her team from Operation Nightfall, now scattered across the rebuilding world but still connected by the bond forged in the depths of an alien command center. They had proven that impossible odds could be overcome with courage, intelligence, and the refusal to surrender. The Devourers would find Earth very different from what the Kithra had intended. Instead of a conquered world ready for harvesting, they would encounter a species that had learned to fight extinction with precision, determination, and the absolute conviction that survival was non-negotiable. Humanity had spent months hiding in caves and tunnels, learning to think like prey. But they had emerged as predators, and the galaxy was about to discover what that meant. The cascade effect that had broken the Kithra network was spreading in ways Dr. Vasquez had never anticipated. Human resistance cells were making contact with other species the aliens had subjugated, sharing the neural disruptor technology and tactical knowledge that had proven effective. A coalition was forming, not just of humans, but of every race that had suffered under Kythera oppression. The Devourers would not face a single recovering world. They would face an alliance of species that had learned to fight together, bound by shared trauma and common purpose. Jessica smiled as she watched the sunset paint the sky above her reclaimed city. The Kythera had inadvertently done humanity a great service. They had taught them that the universe was a hostile place filled with threats beyond imagination. But they had also taught them that such threats could be beaten. Operation Nightfall had been humanity's first victory against extinction. It would not be their last. The memorial wall behind her bore witness to the cost of that victory, thousands of names representing the price of survival. But above those names, new words had been carved into the granite. We remember the fallen. We honor their sacrifice. We continue their fight. And below that, in letters that caught the dying light, Earth stands. The cascade effect continued to spread, not just through alien networks, but through human hearts and minds. The knowledge that they could win, that they had won, that they would win again. Whatever came next, humanity would meet it as they had met the Kythera, together, determined, and absolutely unwilling to yield. The long war for Earth was over. The longer war for survival among the stars was just beginning. And Jessica Chin, along with everyone who had emerged from the darkness beneath the world, intended to win that war too. After all, they were survivors. And survivors were the most dangerous things in the universe.